Hello everybody, it's Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries, and we are back to the series Yeshua Said, and we're up to part number 20, episode 20 of Yeshua Said, and today we'll be reading Matthew 7:15 to 7:20, looking at what just Yeshua Messiah himself said, and nobody else, nothing else, no commentary, nothing else. And I am going to show you that Yeshua said we should be keeping the instructions and guidelines of our wonderful Creator. And he, Yeshua himself, was known as the living Torah because he set the example, pointing people towards those guidelines and instructions as the model of how we should be living if we truly confess and believe with our heart that Yeshua is who he says he is. And we're up to the 20th episode here of Yeshua Said. And if you want to see any of the other episodes, just go to the website, torahlifeministries.org, and you can see them there. But we look at this one, and we look at 17:15 to 17:20 of Matthew. And we're looking at this, and we see Yeshua teaching about the fruit in people's lives. And that's where we're at. So first, let's read the scripture, and then we'll talk about it. It says, "Beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep, but are really vicious wolves. You can identify them by their fruit, that is, by the way they act. Can you pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? A good tree produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. A good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree can't produce good fruit. So every tree that does not produce good fruit is chopped down and thrown into the fire. Yes, just as you can identify a tree by its fruits, so you can identify people by their actions." And as we look at this and we break this down, the first thing we have Yeshua, our Messiah, telling us to do is to beware. Now, there are a lot of people out there in this world that warn us. And as believers, we are to be watchmen for each other. Well, the ultimate watchman is our Messiah Yeshua. And here he was talking to his followers, telling them all to beware. What are they to beware of? Of false prophets. But first, look at beware. What does that mean? Be wary. Have a sharp eye out for these people, and be smart and wise about what's going on around you. It's a warning directly from our Messiah himself, so it can't be taken lightly. He's telling us to beware because there was always issues and things that we were to be aware of. And here he is telling his followers, the people that are listening to him, there's going to be a lot of stuff going on around you. There's a lot of things happening, but beware of these things. And then he goes on to talk about this. And remember, and this scripture comes right after what we did in a previous episode of the 19th episode of Yeshua Said, where they were sitting at the narrow gate and they were talking about the road to righteousness is narrow, but the road to the world's ways is wide. And it comes right after that. And basically there were a lot of people that were proclaiming that you didn't need to take that narrow gate. You could take that wide road with everyone else, pretty much telling people what they wanted to hear. That's something that sounded good to their ears. And Yeshua was saying, beware of those people. Listen, folks, the trick of the adversary is basically to deceive us. He cannot harm us physically. If he could, none of us would be here today. It's a deception is the way he gets us to harm ourselves. He deceives us. And Yeshua says, beware of his deception. And one of the ways he used that deception is by false prophets. People that have a good message, that make things sound good, but no. There should be only one message and only one we should follow, and that's Yeshua Messiah. That's it. Nobody else, no other reason, no other excuses. No, Yeshua Messiah, and that is it. It says, beware of, and then he goes on to say, the false prophets. The false prophets. Now, these prophets are dangerous because they're telling people what their flesh wants to hear. Not what they should know and what they should do, but what their flesh wants to hear. And the problem with that is, just like the world today is, people want to hear something that is against the righteous message of Yeshua Messiah. Because with the righteous message of Yeshua Messiah becomes responsibility and taking action for doing what he wants you to do. But what people want to hear is either the lazy way out of things or the fleshly way out of things. So people are listening to their flesh because they are part of their flesh. Yeshua's message is to go against what your flesh says and to let my spirit dwell inside you, and then you will be guided on the right way, which goes against the worldly ways. Do not conform to the standards of this world. But what people really want to hear is it's okay to conform to the standards of this world. And that's the message of a false prophet. It's okay to do everything like everyone else is doing. Oh, it doesn't make a difference, and there's many different ways. There's not just one way, and all of this stuff. Yeshua said, and Yeshua knows how we are and how we think with our flesh. And he's saying, beware of people that offer something that sounds just like what you want. No, he says, do not conform to the standards of this world is the real message. But that's not what the false prophets are preaching. The false prophets are saying this world is just perfect the way it is, and whatever you want and however you feel is just perfectly fine. So basically what it comes down to is the world today is more interested in a popular message than a righteous message. And I'm not just talking about the world. I can say the average Christian today that's listening to these false prophets are falling for this trap. And as it says, a bad tree is going to be chopped down and thrown into fire. There's a very prophetic thing when it says that, thrown into fire, because we look at what happens to the non-believers in today's world, or the people that say they believe and they don't really believe. So Yeshua is warning people about this. And then we look at sheep and wolves. We look at this and how it's compared in Scripture. We look at Matthew 9:36, and in Matthew 9:36 it says, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. So basically he's calling his followers, the righteous ones, the ones whose heart are right, he's calling them sheep. And then we look at the wolves, and he says here, in Matthew 7:15, beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep. They come disguised as followers of me, but in reality, they are vicious wolves. Now, maybe there's some wolves out there in the world that aren't vicious. Maybe there are some wolves that have a different type of way of thinking, but Yeshua is comparing the false prophet to a vicious wolf. A vicious wolf is an animal that will destroy whatever it can as soon as it can, and any clever way he can make that happen, he will make happen. And that's what we have happening here with the false prophets. There's false and there's true. Now, we look at the word prophet. Now, what is a prophet? A prophet is somebody that takes the word of our Creator and delivers it to the people. And the scriptures are filled with prophets, true prophets, that have truly gotten the word and given it to the people. However, if somebody is not getting the word from our Creator and getting the word from somewhere else, their own thoughts, or even worse, some spirits that are not of Messiah, well, those people are delivering a false message, not a true message, a false prophet, a false messenger. And Yeshua is saying, beware of these people, because what they are saying might sound good, but it's really not. And I got to tell everyone right here, right now, anyone that tells you, now you're not going to like to hear this, but this is the truth, folks, not based on my opinion, based on the scriptures. Anyone that tells you that they're hearing from a wonderful Creator and tells you to do something, if it's not confirmed in the Word, well, it's really not from our Creator. Basically, here's the hard message that we need to accept and you need to understand. Anyone that tells you to do something that goes against what Scripture tells us to do. In fact, Scripture warns us to do certain things and not to do certain things. If somebody is telling you the opposite of what Scripture says, those people are false prophets. They're claiming to know what the Word says. They're claiming that somehow, some way, our Creator spoke to them and they're delivering the Word to us. But if their word is not true, that person is a false prophet. And the sad part is, the majority of pastors and preachers out there today are false prophets. And people are just following them because people are biblically illiterate. They're not reading their Bibles and they're not realizing what the person is telling them is false. And this creates a problem. Here's what it comes down to, folks. If somebody tells you Torah is not relevant today, if somebody tells you works matters not at all, if somebody tells you it's not what we do that's important, or anything like that, they are a false prophet. They are giving a message that does not go along with Scripture. Yeshua certainly said, works and the Torah and all these things, your actions, your heart reveals your actions, and your actions are definitely something you need to do. When you accept me, Yeshua Messiah, what's going to happen is your heart is going to change, and if your heart changes, your actions are going to change. If somebody tells you, oh, we have grace, so we don't need to do anything else. No, you don't need to do anything else to get salvation. You have salvation through the blood of Messiah. But if you truly have the salvation and the blood of Messiah, you should have every desire to do and live the way he taught you to live. So we have to stop listening to these false prophets. And many of the so-called pastors and preachers are leading the way when it comes to false prophets. And we'll read in a future episode here of Yeshua said, where Yeshua said, get away, I didn't even know you, because we're known by our actions. Our heart reveals our actions, and he sees our heart. And we think about false prophets, and we have to understand, there are now, and there will always be false prophets. People to claim to know what the word of our wonderful Creator is saying, and not actually doing what he's saying. Look, every single thing I give you on my website, when it talks about exactly what our Creator and Yeshua Messiah wanted us to do, how to live, and how to follow it. And nothing, you don't add or you don't take away, you explain, but that's it. And that's not what happens today when you go into most churches or you listen to many people when they're telling you Torah is not relevant in their life. Anyone that claims Torah is not relevant in your life is a false prophet. Bottom line. Now, we look at Matthew 24:11. It says, and many false prophets will appear and will deceive many people. You ask yourself, if you go to a church or if you know somebody who's supposedly teaching scripture, are they telling you Torah is not relevant in your life? Do they not even know what Torah means? Are they saying Torah means law and we're not under the law? If they say anything like that, they are a false prophet. I'm not saying they're doing it on purpose. Maybe they're deceived. Maybe they have a lack of knowledge. Or maybe they know and they are doing it on purpose. Regardless of it, they're still a false prophet. They're preaching a false message that is not true, and they're actually teaching against what our scriptures say to do. So it says, beware of false prophets. That's directly from our Messiah. That is a command. Beware of false prophets. I just explained to you what a false prophet was. A true prophet is the sheep, the followers of Messiah that listen to his word and give it to the people. His word. A false prophet is those that teach against his word. And those that teach against Torah are teaching against his word. I'll say it and I'll say it again all the time. Without Messiah, Torah means nothing. But if you have Messiah, you cannot not have Torah. That's an oxymoron. And that's what many people believe because they're listening to false prophets. That's what it comes down to. Now we look at what it says in Matthew 24:24. It says, for false messiahs and false prophets will rise up and perform great signs and wonders, so to deceive. And many people might have a good heart, but they're deceived. These false prophets are clever and they're deceiving people. So just like Adam and Eve were deceived, that continues all the way on to today. People are being seriously deceived. So we need to wake up and do something about it. It says that you shall be known by your fruit. What does fruit mean? What does it really mean? It's your actions. Your actions. Your heart's going to reveal your actions. That's what it means. Just like it says Matthew 12:33. A tree is identified by its fruit. If a tree is good, its fruit will be good. If a tree is bad, its fruit will be bad. If we say our actions is our fruit, what are we basing good and bad on? And there's two ways to base it on. It's the world's ways or Messiah's ways. That's it. That's it. So if we base our actions on the world ways, there's no such thing as bad, because the world's ways is whatever we do, any of our actions are good according to us. But Messiah certainly says there's a good way and a wrong way, a good way and a bad way. And the good way is to be followers of me and do as I say, and the bad way is to do opposite. So in essence, what it's saying is anyone who follows my way, anyone who's truly a follower of Messiah and follows my ways are doing good fruit and will do good fruit. Anyone that is not following me and my ways are not doing good fruit. That's it. That's what it comes down to. So Yeshua taught people to keep the Torah, which means guidelines and instructions of our Creator. And those people that are doing their best to follow the guidelines and instructions of our Creator, keeping what they can of those instructions and guidelines, not what they want to, but what they're able to, or what they're capable of being able to keep. Anyone that does that are doing good works. They're creating good fruit. And anyone that's doing against that is creating bad fruit. And folks, I'm not saying it says right here, a tree is identified by its fruit. So when somebody comes up to me and says, oh, they believe in Yeshua, but they're doing things like the world, and they're doing things against Scripture, They could say they believe whoever they want and give all the lip service they want. They're not producing good fruit. You can only produce good fruit if you're following the ways of Messiah. Now, to our human flesh, everything might seem like it's good fruit. Oh, that seems like a good thing. That person really cares and everything else. But no, you either follow the ways of Messiah or you don't. That's the bottom line. And that's why the Yeshua Said series is so important, because we're looking at what Messiah told us to do. So I pray that after this, now you know what a true prophet is and a false prophet is. You know what good fruit is and bad fruit is. And you understand the significance of this, because it says what we are to do to false prophets is to destroy that root immediately. That root is to be destroyed immediately. And the scriptures talk so hard against them, and actually they're commanded to be put to death. So their false prophecies, so their false ways are not spread amongst the community. They are to be put to death. That's how severe it is. And our wonderful Creator knows how this can create such a problem. And I'm not recommending anyone put anyone to death, but I'm telling you how severe this is. So somebody to be a false prophet. And Yeshua said, beware of these people. He warned them for a reason, because he knew how it was going to be, and he knew how people think in the flesh. So if you have any comments or questions about this episode of Yeshua Said, post them below the video. Thanks for checking us out. Until then, until the next episode, have a great day, and shalom, shalom.
Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways, Torah Life Ministries. Come out of the world,